"I saw your ex-wife getting out of a limousine," Victoria announced, casually dropping the bombshell as she filed her manicured nails. Nathan Reynolds nearly choked on his morning coffee. "That's impossible. I left her with nothing," he declared with absolute certainty. But when he would eventually see with his own eyes, the foundation of his carefully constructed reality would begin to crumble. Nathan set down his Italian crystal coffee cup with a controlled motion that betrayed his irritation. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Manhattan penthouse, catching the diamond on Victoria's finger, a replacement for the one he'd originally given her, which she'd deemed insufficient 6 months into their marriage. At 54, Nathan still cut an impressive figure. Salt and pepper hair expertly styled, his custom Tom Ford suit hiding the slight paunch he'd developed in recent years. "Are you sure it was Olivia?" he asked, his voice measured but tinged with disbelief. The very thought of his ex-wife in a limousine was absurd. When he'd meticulously orchestrated their divorce 2 years ago, he'd made certain she'd walk away with barely enough to cover a month's rent in a mediocre apartment. Victoria tossed her platinum blonde hair over her shoulder, her bright red lips curling into a smirk. "Of course, I'm sure, Nathan. I may not have known her well, but I'd recognize those green eyes and that caramel-colored hair anywhere. She looked different, though. More put together." She paused dramatically. "Expensive?" Nathan scoffed, adjusting his Patek Philippe watch. "You must be mistaken. Olivia was completely dependent on me. She didn't even have a college degree, for God's sake. Just a pretty face who played housewife for 15 years. He stood, smoothing down his tie. "Probably some look-alike. Or maybe she's dating some fool who's spending his money on her." Victoria shrugged, seemingly losing interest in the topic as quickly as she'd brought it up. "Whatever you say, darling. I know what I saw. It was outside that new high-end boutique on Fifth Avenue, the one where I bought those Louboutins last week." She wiggled her foot, showing off the red-soled shoes that had cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Those shoes were $1,100, Nathan remarked, not because he was concerned about the money, he wasn't, but because he wanted to change the subject. Any mention of Olivia always left him feeling strangely unsettled, though he'd never admit it. Victoria's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. $1,200, actually. The price went up. She returned to filing her nails, the rhythmic scraping filling the silence between them. "Besides, you said yourself when we got married that I should look the part. Your words, not mine." Nathan nodded absently, walking to the window to survey the city beneath him, a city he'd conquered through ruthless determination and calculated risks. From the 62nd floor, people looked like ants, insignificant and easily crushed. That's how he'd always viewed obstacles in his path, including his marriage to Olivia when it no longer served his purposes. The penthouse phone rang, and their housekeeper, Maria, answered it in the other room. A moment later, she appeared at the doorway of the breakfast nook. "Mr. Reynolds, it's Mr. Blackwell on the line. He says it's urgent." Nathan frowned. Richard Blackwell, his CFO, knew better than to disturb his morning routine. "Tell him I'll call him back in 15 minutes. Maria nodded and disappeared. Victoria stood, stretching languidly like a cat. "I'm going shopping with Melanie for the charity gala next week. I need something that will make all those socialite wives green with envy." He kissed him on the cheek, leaving a perfect red imprint. "Don't work too hard, darling." Nathan barely acknowledged her departure, his mind already shifting to business matters. Yet, as he made his way to his home office, the image Victoria had planted, Olivia stepping out of a limousine, niggled at him like a splinter beneath his skin. He picked up the phone and dialed Richard's number. "This better be important, Richard. You know I don't like to be disturbed at home." "Sorry, Nathan, but we've got a situation with the Carson merger. Their CEO is making last-minute demands about the board structure. Wants 2 additional seats." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Absolutely not. We agreed on terms. If Carson's getting cold feet, remind him of what happened to Westfield Industries when they backed out of our deal last year." "I'll handle it," Richard assured him. "Also, the quarterly numbers are in. We're up 17% from projections. The offshore restructuring is paying off handsomely." A smile spread across Nathan's face. The offshore restructuring was their code for the perfectly legal but aggressively creative accounting methods they used to minimize tax burdens. "Excellent. Make sure those numbers are highlighted in the report to shareholders." "Anything else?" "Just one more thing," Richard said, his tone changing slightly. "I saw Olivia last night." Nathan's grip on the phone tightened. "My ex-wife? What about her?" "She was at Le Bernardin with Marcus Sullivan." "The modeling agent?" Nathan felt a strange sensation in his stomach. Marcus Sullivan was one of the most powerful agents in the fashion industry, known for transforming unknown faces into supermodels. "Yes, they seemed friendly. Thought you might want to know." "Why would I care who she dines with?" Nathan replied, too quickly. "Olivia's past is no concern of mine." "Of course," Richard backpedaled. "Just making conversation. I'll see you at the office." Nathan hung up, his good mood evaporating. First Victoria, now Richard. Why was everyone suddenly seeing Olivia? And why was she with Marcus Sullivan? The modeling world was one she'd abandoned when they married, at his insistence. "A Reynolds wife has no need to work," he'd told her repeatedly. And she'd given it up, setting aside her portfolio of early modeling jobs for department stores and local advertisements. Nathan found himself walking to his private study, unlocking the bottom drawer of his desk where he kept personal documents. Beneath contracts and his will was a manila folder he hadn't opened in years. Inside was a collection of newspaper clippings and photographs, evidence of his life with Olivia that he'd meant to discard, but somehow never had. There she was, 25 years old, standing beside him at a charity gala shortly after they'd married. Her caramel hair was shorter then, her green eyes bright with youth and possibility. She'd been beautiful. Still was, he had to admit, but in an accessible, almost innocent way that had both attracted and irritated him. Victoria's beauty was sharp, deliberate, weaponized. Olivia's had been natural, unassuming. He flipped through more photos. Their honeymoon in Bali, a Christmas party at his office, the housewarming for the mansion he'd bought in the Hamptons. In each image, Olivia stood slightly behind him, her smile polite but increasingly reserved as the years progressed. When had that vibrant young woman become the quiet, accommodating wife he'd so easily discarded? Nathan closed the folder abruptly, annoyed at himself for this unexpected detour into sentimentality. It wasn't like him to dwell on the past. He was a forward-looking man, always planning the next acquisition, the next triumph. Olivia was ancient history, a chapter closed and locked. He arrived at his office building 30 minutes later, nodding curtly to the security guards who rushed to hold the door for him. In the elevator, his executive assistant, Gretchen, carefully selected to be older, efficiently plain, and, most importantly, not Victoria 2.0, handed him his schedule for the day. "The Carson team will be here at 11, she said, "and your lunch with the mayor is confirmed for 1 o'clock at the Yale Club." "Cancel the lunch," Nathan said impulsively. "Tell him something came up. An emergency with an overseas investor." Gretchen looked surprised but nodded. "Of course, Mr. Reynolds. Shall I reschedule?" "Later this week. I have something personal to attend to." That something personal wasn't fully formed in Nathan's mind until he was back in his town car, directing his driver to the address of Marcus Sullivan's modeling agency in Chelsea. He told himself it was mere curiosity, a businessman checking on an unexpected development. Nothing more. Sullivan Models occupied the top 3 floors of a renovated industrial building. The reception area was minimalist and intimidating. White walls adorned with enormous black and white photographs of the agency's most successful talents. Nathan approached the front desk, where a young man with an undercut and chunky glasses regarded him with practiced indifference. "I'm here to see Marcus Sullivan," Nathan announced, expecting the usual deference his name typically commanded. The receptionist didn't appear impressed. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he'll want to see me." Tell him Nathan Reynolds is here." The young man picked up his phone, murmured something, then waited. After a moment, he nodded. "Please, have a seat, Mr. Reynolds. Someone will be with you shortly." Nathan remained standing, examining the photographs on the wall. Most were of young women and men with cheekbones that could cut glass, and the blank, slightly hungry expressions that passed for high fashion. None were of Olivia. Not that he expected to see her here. Victoria must have been mistaken about the limousine. And Richard? Well, Richard probably just saw someone who looked like Olivia. Nathan Reynolds. What an unexpected surprise. Nathan turned to find Marcus Sullivan himself striding toward him, hand extended. At 52, Sullivan still had the lean build and confident posture of the male model he'd once been before transitioning to the business side of the industry. His silver hair was cropped short, his suit impeccably tailored, but with an artistic edge that screamed, "Creative professional." "Marcus," Nathan shook his hand firmly. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. It's been a while." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. 10 years, at least. Not since that charity event for the Children's Hospital. You outbid me for that hideous sculpture, as I recall. Nathan had forgotten that encounter. "Business has been good, then?" he asked, gesturing to the impressive space. "Extraordinarily so. The agency has expanded into Asia and Europe in the last 5 years, but somehow I doubt you're here to catch up on my business ventures." Marcus studied him with the appraising eye of someone used to evaluating faces and bodies for commercial potential. "Your office said you were interested in some of our newer talent?" Nathan blinked, momentarily confused, until he realized Marcus was offering him a pretense, a professional reason for this impromptu visit. "Yes, for a new advertising campaign. Reynolds Enterprises is launching a luxury lifestyle brand." Marcus nodded, though his expression suggested he didn't believe a word. "Come to my office. We can discuss what you're looking for." As they walked through the agency, Nathan scanned every face, every open door, half expecting to see Olivia. The place was bustling with activity. Photographers reviewing shots on large monitors, models being fitted by stylists, makeup artists working their magic. Marcus's corner office offered a panoramic view of the city, the walls covered with framed magazine covers featuring his discoveries. He gestured for Nathan to take a seat on a sleek leather sofa. "So, Nathan," Marcus said, folding his hands together, "what is it you're really doing here?" Nathan hadn't anticipated such directness. He'd expected the usual business dance, pleasantries, reminiscences, gradual circling toward the actual point. "I heard a rumor that you might be working with my ex-wife," he said finally, deciding that bluntness was the most efficient approach. Marcus's expression remained neutral. "Olivia? Yes. We've been working together." The confirmation hit Nathan with unexpected force. "In what capacity?" "She's one of our most promising new faces in our age-appropriate luxury campaigns. Cosmetics, jewelry, high-end fashion for the discerning mature woman." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "She's quite remarkable, actually. Has a natural camera presence that's rare, even among professionals." Nathan struggled to process this information. "But she hasn't modeled in nearly 20 years. Sometimes talent just needs the right moment," Marcus replied smoothly. "And Olivia's moment is now. She's already booked 3 major campaigns, and we're in talks with several luxury brands that are specifically looking for elegant women in their 40s. Nathan felt oddly betrayed, though he had no right to. "I see. Do you?" Marcus's tone hardened slightly. "Because, from where I'm sitting, you look like a man who expected his ex-wife to disappear into obscurity after he discarded her." "That's not—" Nathan began, then stopped. Wasn't that exactly what he'd expected? What he'd planned for? "Tell me, Nathan," Marcus continued, "did you know Olivia came to see me for representation right before your wedding? That she had 3 promising auditions lined up? That Bergdorf's was considering her for their spring catalog?" Nathan hadn't known. Or perhaps he had, and had chosen to forget. "She canceled everything when you told her you didn't want her to work," Marcus said. 15 years of her life, devoted to being Mrs. Nathan Reynolds. And how did you repay that loyalty? Nathan stood abruptly. I didn't come here for a lecture on my failed marriage, Marcus. No, you came here because you can't stand the idea that she might be successful without you. Marcus also rose, his height matching Nathan's. Well, get used to it. Olivia Morgan, she's using her maiden name now, is going to be everywhere soon. Magazine covers, billboards, television commercials, and there's nothing you can do about it. Nathan left Sullivan Models with his mind in turmoil, ignoring his driver's questioning glance as he slid into the back seat of his Mercedes. Back to the office, he barked, loosening his tie, which suddenly felt like a noose around his neck. As the car pulled away from the curb, he stared unseeing at the crowded sidewalks of Manhattan, trying to process what he'd just learned. Olivia, his quiet, compliant ex-wife, was not only modeling again but apparently thriving. The woman who'd once needed his approval to change her hairstyle was now appearing in major campaigns. How was this possible? And more importantly, why did it bother him so much? When Nathan returned to his office, he brushed past Gretchen without acknowledging her and closed his door with more force than necessary. Seated at his imposing mahogany desk, he opened his laptop and typed Olivia Morgan model into the search engine. The results made his stomach drop. There she was, his ex-wife, staring back at him from professional photographs that showcased a woman he barely recognized. In one image, she wore an elegant black evening gown, her caramel hair swept up to reveal the graceful curve of her neck. In another, she gazed directly at the camera, green eyes intense, wearing a crisp white shirt and simple gold jewelry that emphasized her natural beauty. The most recent post was from Elegance Cosmetics, announcing Olivia as the face of their new ageless beauty line. The caption read, "True beauty isn't about looking young. It's about looking authentically yourself at any age. Introducing our newest ambassador, Olivia Morgan." Neatfin, Nathan scrolled through comments filled with praise. Finally, a real woman representing beauty. She's stunning. Where has she been hiding all these years? A sharp knock at his door interrupted his research. What? He snapped. Richard entered, looking concerned. The Carson team is waiting in the conference room. You're 20 minutes late. Nathan glanced at his watch. He'd lost track of time, something that never happened to him. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Start without me. After Richard left, Nathan took one last look at the photos of Olivia. There was something different about her beyond the professional styling and lighting. A confidence, a self-possession that hadn't been there before. She looked happy. The realization unsettled him deeply. Throughout the Carson meeting, Nathan struggled to focus. He answered questions mechanically, his mind repeatedly drifting to Olivia. When Carson's CEO made a joke about stock options, Nathan smiled several seconds too late, earning a concerned glance from Richard. By 6 o'clock, Nathan had made a decision. He called his private investigator, a discreet former police detective named Frank Walters, who had handled numerous sensitive matters for him over the years. I need a complete profile on Olivia Morgan, Nathan instructed over the phone. Current residence, financial situation, daily routine, everything. And I need it yesterday. That'll cost you, Frank replied. Rush jobs always do. Money's not an issue. Just get it done. That evening, Nathan begged off dinner with Victoria, claiming a headache. She didn't seem particularly disappointed, mentioning something about meeting friends for drinks anyway. Their relationship had settled into a comfortable pattern of mutual convenience. She enjoyed the lifestyle he provided, and he appreciated having an attractive, socially adept partner for business functions. Romance had faded quickly after the wedding, replaced by a pragmatic arrangement that suited them both. Or so he'd thought. Alone in his penthouse, Nathan poured himself a generous scotch and wandered to the wall of windows overlooking Central Park. The city glittered below him, millions of lives unfolding in the grid of streets and buildings. Somewhere out there was Olivia, living a life he hadn't planned for her. His phone buzzed with a text from Frank. First report ready. Sending encrypted file now. Nathan downloaded the file onto his tablet. A strange anticipation building as he entered the password. Frank's report was thorough, as always. Olivia was living in a spacious loft in Tribeca, a far cry from the modest apartment she'd moved to after the divorce. She'd signed with Sullivan Models 8 months ago and had already earned a substantial income from 3 major campaigns. Her daily routine included early morning workouts with a personal trainer, regular meetings at Sullivan's agency, and photography sessions at various studios around the city. The most surprising detail was buried in the financial section. Olivia had recently made a 7-figure real estate investment, purchasing a historic brownstone in Brooklyn Heights that was currently undergoing renovation. Impossible, Nathan muttered, rereading the section. The settlement he'd so carefully crafted had left her with barely enough to survive for a year. Even with modeling success, she couldn't have accumulated enough for such a purchase so quickly. He scrolled further, looking for an explanation, and found it in Frank's notes. Subject appears to have received financial backing from Carter Investment Group 6 months ago. Nathan frowned. Carter Investment Group was known for funding promising business ventures and talent, but they were notoriously selective. They wouldn't have backed Olivia without seeing exceptional potential. The report included several surveillance photos, Olivia entering her building, having lunch at an outdoor cafe, stepping into a black town car. In each image, she looked poised and purposeful, so different from the woman who had left their marriage with her shoulders slumped in defeat. Nathan drained his scotch and poured another, a plan forming in his mind. He needed to see her in person, to understand this transformation. Scrolling through Frank's report again, he noted that Olivia was scheduled for a photo shoot tomorrow at a studio in the meatpacking district. The next morning, Nathan informed Gretchen he would be working from home. Instead, he directed his driver to a location a block from the photography studio. Dressed more casually than usual in a sports jacket and open-collared shirt, he hoped to blend in with the creative professionals who frequented the area. The studio occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse, its large windows covered with blinds. Nathan positioned himself at a cafe across the street, ordering a coffee he didn't want, and opening his laptop as if working. For nearly an hour he observed people coming and going, assistants carrying coffee trays, couriers delivering packages, stylists wheeling racks of clothing. Then a black Lincoln Town car pulled up, and Olivia emerged. Nathan's breath caught. In person, her transformation was even more striking. She wore slim black pants and a simple cream blouse, her caramel hair loose around her shoulders. She thanked the driver and entered the building with the confident stride of someone who belonged there. Nathan closed his laptop, paid for his untouched coffee, and crossed the street before he could reconsider. At the studio's entrance, a young woman with a clipboard stopped him. "Can I help you?" Nathan straightened his jacket. "I'm here to see Olivia Morgan." The woman consulted her clipboard. "Your name isn't on the list. Are you with the Elegance team?" "No, I'm an old friend. I was hoping to surprise her." The woman looked skeptical. "Ms. Morgan is in the middle of a shoot. I can't interrupt." "Please," Nathan said, employing the charm that had helped him close countless deals. "Just tell her Nathan is here. If she doesn't want to see me, I'll leave immediately." The woman hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Wait here." Through the partly opened door, Nathan could see activity in the large open space. Lights being adjusted, people moving equipment. He caught a glimpse of Olivia sitting in a makeup chair, a stylist working on her hair. A moment later, the assistant returned. "She says she'll see you during her break in 20 minutes. You can wait in the reception area." Nathan was escorted to a small waiting room with uncomfortable modern furniture and walls covered with framed magazine covers. He paced the room, suddenly unsure why he was there or what he planned to say. Exactly 20 minutes later, the door opened, and Olivia stood before him. Up close, she was even more beautiful than in the photographs, her skin glowing, her green eyes assessing him coolly. "Nathan?" she said, her voice neutral. "This is unexpected." He found himself momentarily speechless, thrown off balance by her composure. In their marriage, she had always been the one to fill awkward silences, to smooth over difficult moments. Now she simply waited, one eyebrow slightly raised. "You look well," he finally managed. "Thank you." She gestured to the seating area. "I have 10 minutes before I need to get back. What brings you here?" They sat across from each other, Nathan perched uncomfortably on the edge of a chrome and leather chair that seemed designed to prevent relaxation. "I heard you're working with Marcus Sullivan," he began. "Apparently, quite successfully." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "News travels fast. Victoria saw you getting out of a limousine the other day. I didn't believe her at first." "Ah," Olivia nodded, as if this explained everything. "And you came to verify for yourself." Nathan shifted in his seat. "I was curious. The last I heard, you were working retail." "I was," she acknowledged, "for 8 months after our divorce. It was educational. And now you're modeling again." "Yes." She glanced at her watch. "Is that why you tracked me down? To confirm my employment status?" Her directness caught him off guard. The Olivia he remembered would have been anxious to please, eager to explain. This woman seemed perfectly comfortable with his discomfort. "I'm just trying to understand," Nathan said, leaning forward. "How did this happen so quickly? The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, the campaigns with major brands, even with Sullivan's backing, it's an unusual trajectory." Olivia's expression changed subtly, a flash of something, surprise, perhaps, crossing her features before her composure returned. "You've been investigating me." It wasn't a question, but Nathan felt compelled to defend himself. "I was concerned." "No," she said quietly. "You were thrown off balance. You designed a divorce settlement meant to ensure I would struggle for years, possibly forever. Finding out I've not only survived, but thrived, has disrupted your narrative." Her insight, so accurate, so bluntly delivered, left him momentarily speechless. "My break is over," she said, standing. "It was interesting seeing you, Nathan." "Wait," he said, rising quickly. "Have dinner with me. Tonight, to catch up properly." Olivia studied him, her expression unreadable. "Why would I do that?" Nathan, accustomed to people eagerly accepting his invitations, found himself floundering. "For old time's sake?" She laughed then, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "Our old times aren't exactly cherished memories, Nathan." "To make amends, then," he said impulsively. Olivia tilted her head, considering him. "You know what? I'll accept. Not because I believe you've suddenly developed a conscience, but because I'm curious what this is really about." She took a business card from her purse and wrote on the back, "Meet me here at 8. Don't be late." Nathan glanced at the card after she left. She'd written the name of a restaurant in Soho, not one of the ultra-exclusive establishments he typically frequented, but a well-regarded place known for its innovative cuisine and artistic clientele. He left the studio feeling oddly victorious, though he couldn't have explained why. Throughout the day, he found himself checking the time, the hours crawling by with unexpected slowness. At 6, he returned to his penthouse to change, selecting a more casual outfit than his usual business attire. Dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that Victoria had once told him brought out the blue in his eyes. "Going somewhere?" Victoria's voice startled him as he adjusted his collar in the bedroom mirror. Nathan hadn't heard her come in. "Business dinner," he said smoothly. "Potential investor who's allergic to formality. Hence the casual approach." Victoria leaned against the doorframe, her expression skeptical. "Since when do you cater to investors' fashion preferences?" "Since this one controls a fund worth $2 billion, Nathan replied, the lie coming easily. "Sometimes adaptation is necessary for success." Victoria straightened, her interest apparently exhausted. "I'm going to the Petersons' charity gala tonight. Don't wait up." Nathan arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early. an unusual occurrence for a man who typically made others wait for him as a subtle power play. The place was busy, but not crowded, with an eclectic mix of patrons ranging from artistic types in carefully curated vintage clothes to tech entrepreneurs in expensive, casual wear. Olivia arrived precisely at 8, wearing a simple black dress that Nathan suspected cost more than she'd ever spent on clothing during their marriage. She greeted him with a brief, impersonal kiss on the cheek, the scent of her perfume, unfamiliar, sophisticated, lingering as she took her seat. "You look beautiful," Nathan said, meaning it. "Thank you," she replied, accepting the compliment without elaboration. She studied the wine list with the confidence of someone who knew what she was looking for. When the waiter appeared, she ordered a bottle of Burgundy that Nathan recognized as an excellent but not ostentatious choice. "You've developed an interest in wine," he observed after the waiter left. Olivia smiled. "I've developed many interests since our divorce. Wine, art, architecture. It's amazing how much room there is for personal growth when you're not constantly trying to accommodate someone else's expectations." The subtle barb wasn't lost on Nathan. "I never meant to stifle you," he said, surprising himself with the admission. "Didn't you?" She met his gaze directly. "You systematically discouraged every ambition I had that wasn't related to being Mrs. Nathan Reynolds. My modeling career, my interest in interior design, even the charity work I wanted to do. You preferred me dependent." The waiter returned with the wine, performing the ritual of presentation and tasting. After he departed, Nathan leaned forward. "If that's true, I'm sorry, but you have to admit, you never really fought for those things." Olivia took a sip of wine, considering his words. "That's fair. I was young when we met, insecure about my place in your world. You were so certain about everything, and I mistook that certainty for wisdom." She set down her glass. "But we're not here to rehash our marriage. Why did you really want to see me, Nathan?" "I told you." "Curiosity?" Nathan replied, reaching for his wine glass to buy time. "You've made quite a transformation. It's impressive." Olivia's eyes narrowed slightly, clearly not convinced by his answer, but she let it pass. Life after Nathan Reynolds. Who would have thought it could be so fulfilling? The waiter arrived to take their order. Olivia chose the sea bass without hesitation, while Nathan selected the steak, medium rare, a choice he'd made in countless restaurants over the years. As the waiter departed, Nathan found himself wondering when he'd last tried something new, taken a risk with something as simple as a meal. "So," he said, steering toward safer territory, "tell me about your work with Sullivan. How did that come about?" Something in Olivia's expression softened. "It was accidental, really. After the retail job, I was working as a personal shopper at Bergdorf's. One day, I was helping a client, an older woman looking for something for her daughter's wedding. She was struggling, convinced nothing would look good on her." Olivia paused, a small smile playing at her lips. "I spent 2 hours with her, finding the perfect outfit, doing her makeup in the dressing room. By the end, she looked in the mirror and actually cried, said she hadn't felt beautiful in 20 years. That woman was Marcus Sullivan's mother," Nathan guessed, seeing where the story was heading. Olivia nodded. "She mentioned me to Marcus, said I had a gift for making women feel confident. He came to Bergdorf's the next day and offered me a job as a style consultant for his mature clients. 3 months later, one of his photographers suggested putting me in front of the camera." She shrugged lightly. "The rest just happened." Nathan found himself genuinely impressed. "That's quite a story." "Life is full of unexpected turns," Olivia agreed. "Sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a beginning." She studied him over the rim of her glass. "What about you? How's married life with Victoria?" The question caught Nathan off guard. He'd expected recriminations, perhaps, or pointed silence on the subject of his new wife. Not this casual inquiry. "It's fine," he said finally. "Victoria is Victoria." Olivia laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "That's the most honest thing you've said all evening." Their meals arrived, elegantly plated and aromatic. Nathan cut into his steak mechanically, his appetite diminished by the strange tension between them. He watched Olivia take a bite of her sea bass, noting how she closed her eyes briefly to savor the flavor. Something she'd always done, he realized, though he hadn't noticed it in years. "The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights," he said abruptly. "That's a significant investment. Sullivan Models must be paying you extremely well." Olivia set down her fork, her expression cooling. "You really did investigate me thoroughly." "Professional habit," Nathan said, not quite apologetic. "But it doesn't add up. Even with successful campaigns, the timeline is too compressed for that kind of purchase." "Perhaps I have a wealthy benefactor," Olivia suggested, her tone light but with an edge. "A romantic partner eager to shower me with gifts. Isn't that what you assumed when Victoria first mentioned seeing me?" Nathan felt an unexpected surge of jealousy at the thought. "Do you? Have a benefactor, I mean?" Olivia smiled enigmatically. "Would it bother you if I did?" "No," he said too quickly. You just what, Nathan?" she interrupted, her green eyes challenging. "Lost the right to question my financial decisions when you had your lawyers craft a divorce settlement designed to leave me destitute?" The accusation hung between them, raw and undeniable. Nathan had indeed instructed his legal team to secure the most advantageous terms possible, viewing the divorce as he would any business transaction, maximizing his position regardless of the cost to the other party. "I never meant for you to struggle permanently," he said finally, knowing how inadequate the words sounded. "I assumed you'd adapt." "I did adapt," Olivia replied evenly, "just not in the way you anticipated." She took another sip of wine. "But to satisfy your curiosity, no, I don't have a wealthy boyfriend bankrolling my life. I have something far more valuable: skills, determination, and people who recognized my potential when I couldn't see it myself." Nathan nodded slowly, sensing there was more to the story, but recognizing she had no obligation to share it with him. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the ambient noise of the restaurant filling the space between them. "You seem different," he said eventually. "Not just the external things, the clothes, the career. You're more confident." Olivia considered this. "I am different. Divorce has a way of stripping you down to essentials. When you took away the financial security, the social status, all the trappings of being Mrs. Reynolds, I had to figure out who Olivia Morgan really was." She set down her fork. "It was terrifying at first, but then it became liberating. And who is she? Olivia Morgan? Still figuring that out," she admitted with a small smile. "But I like her. She's resilient, and she doesn't need anyone's approval to feel worthy." The subtle rebuke wasn't lost on Nathan. Throughout their marriage, he'd withheld approval strategically, doling it out in small measures when she conformed to his expectations. It had been an effective method of control, one he'd employed instinctively rather than consciously. "I wasn't always a good husband," he acknowledged, surprising himself with the admission. Olivia's eyebrows rose. "No, you weren't," she agreed, without rancor. "But I wasn't always the best wife either. I gave away my power too easily, mistaking submission for love." She reached for her wine. "We both played our parts." The waiter appeared to clear their plates and offer the dessert menu. Nathan declined, but Olivia requested the chocolate soufflé with evident pleasure. Another change, he noted. The Olivia he'd been married to had constantly worried about her weight, rarely indulging in desserts. "Do you ever think about us?" he asked, when they were alone again. "About what went wrong?" "At first, constantly," she admitted. "I spent months analyzing every mistake, every argument, every silent meal across that ridiculously long dining table." She shook her head ruefully. "Eventually, I realized it wasn't productive. We wanted different things, Nathan. You wanted a trophy, an accessory to your success. I wanted a partner, though I didn't have the courage to demand one." Her assessment was brutal in its accuracy. Nathan had indeed viewed her primarily as an asset, beautiful, accommodating, socially appropriate. Her value had been in how she enhanced his image, not in who she was as a person. "And now?" he pressed. "What do you want now?" Olivia studied him, her expression thoughtful. "Authenticity, growth, the freedom to make my own choices, good or bad." Her dessert arrived, a perfect soufflé accompanied by a small pitcher of warm chocolate sauce. She poured it slowly over the top, watching as it melted through the delicate surface. "What about you, Nathan? What do you want?" The question caught him off guard. What did he want? More success, certainly. Greater wealth, increased influence. These had been his driving motivations for as long as he could remember. Yet, sitting across from Olivia, watching her simple enjoyment of a dessert, he felt oddly hollow. "I'm not sure anymore," he admitted, the truth of the words surprising him. Olivia took a bite of her soufflé, closing her eyes briefly in appreciation. "That's a starting point, at least. Recognizing what you don't know." As she ate her dessert, Nathan found himself studying her. The graceful movement of her hands, the way she tucked a strand of caramel hair behind her ear, the quiet confidence in her posture. She had blossomed in his absence, becoming more fully herself rather than less. When the check arrived, Nathan reached for it automatically, but Olivia placed her hand on top of his. "Let me," she said. "I invited you, remember?" "That's not necessary," he protested, uncomfortable with the role reversal. "I know it's not necessary," she replied evenly, "but I want to. Consider it a symbolic gesture, a small reclaiming of balance." Nathan reluctantly withdrew his hand, watching as she placed her credit card on the leather folder without checking the total. Another subtle shift in the power dynamic between them. Outside the restaurant, the autumn evening was cool and clear, the city humming with its perpetual energy. They stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, their dinner conversation having created an unexpected intimacy that neither seemed quite ready to relinquish. "Can I give you a ride home?" Nathan offered, gesturing toward his waiting town car. Olivia shook her head. "Thank you, but I have my own car." As if on cue, a sleek black Audi pulled up to the curb, the driver stepping out to open the rear door. Nathan recognized the car as a high-end model, worth at least $100,000. Yet another piece of evidence that Olivia's financial situation was far more robust than he had anticipated. "It was an interesting evening, Nathan," she said, extending her hand formally. "Thank you for reaching out." He took her hand, holding it a moment longer than necessary. "Could we do this again? Perhaps next week?" Olivia studied him, her expression guarded. "Why?" It was a fair question, one for which Nathan didn't have a ready answer. "I'd like to get to know this new version of you," he said finally. "No agenda, no investigations, just conversation." She seemed to weigh his sincerity, searching his face. "I'll think about it," she said finally, withdrawing her hand. "Good night, Nathan." He watched her slide into the Audi, the car pulling smoothly into traffic and disappearing around a corner. For several minutes, Nathan stood motionless on the sidewalk, ignoring his own waiting driver, trying to understand the unfamiliar emotions stirring within him. Back at his penthouse, Nathan found Victoria already home, lounging on the sofa in silk pajamas, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up as he entered, her expression mildly curious. "How was your business dinner?" she asked, making air quotes around the words. Nathan loosened his tie. "Productive. How was the gala?" "Boring. Same people, same conversations, same overcooked chicken." She returned to her phone. "Melissa Jenkins got another facelift. Looks like a startled cat." Nathan poured himself a scotch, hardly listening to Victoria's gossip about people he barely knew and cared about even less. His mind was still with Olivia, replaying their conversation, analyzing her words and expressions. "I'm meeting with the interior designer tomorrow about the Hamptons house renovation," Victoria announced. "I'm thinking of going with all white for the master suite. Very minimalist chic." "Whatever you think best," Nathan replied absently, knowing she didn't actually want his input. Victoria set down her phone, studying him with sudden intensity. "You're distracted tonight. Everything okay with the Carson deal?" "Fine," he assured her, grateful for the ready excuse. "Just some complications with the restructuring. Nothing to worry about." She nodded, accepting the explanation without further inquiry. Another indication of how separate their lives had become, despite sharing the same address. Victoria had never shown much interest in the details of his business, just as he paid little attention to her social calendar or shopping expeditions. Theirs was a marriage of convenience and mutual benefits, lacking the emotional entanglements that had complicated his relationship with Olivia. Yet now, comparing the two women, Nathan found himself questioning choices he'd long considered self-evidently correct. Victoria was undeniably beautiful, socially adept, sexually sophisticated, everything he'd told himself he wanted in a partner. But their connection remained superficial, a performative partnership rather than a genuine bond. His phone chimed with a text message. It was Frank Walters. Additional information on OM obtained. Significant detail: trust fund activated on 45th birthday. Previously unknown. Maternal grandmother's bequest, held in escrow during marriage per prenup terms. Estimated value, $4.5 million. Nathan stared at the message, pieces falling into place. Olivia had come from a modest background, or so he'd believed. They'd met when she was 25, and he'd never inquired deeply about her family, assuming their financial situation based on her career as a waitress and aspiring model. The idea that she'd had a trust fund all along, one substantial enough to fund her current lifestyle, was astonishing. More troubling was the revelation that this asset had been held in escrow during marriage per prenup terms. Nathan recalled the prenuptial agreement his lawyers had prepared, a document Olivia had signed without much scrutiny. Had there been a clause requiring her to set aside any inheritance during their marriage? He couldn't remember the specific details, having left the particulars to his legal team with the general instruction to protect my interests at all costs. "I'm going to my study," he told Victoria, who merely nodded without looking up from her phone. In the privacy of his home office, Nathan retrieved the digital copy of their prenuptial agreement, scanning through the dense legal language until he found it. A clause stipulating that any inheritance or trust fund coming to either party during the marriage would remain separate property, not subject to division in case of divorce. A standard provision, but one that had apparently worked in Olivia's favor rather than his. He leaned back in his chair, processing this information. Olivia hadn't mentioned the trust fund during dinner. Why? Was she enjoying keeping him in the dark, letting him wonder about the source of her newfound prosperity? Or was it simply that she no longer felt any obligation to share personal details with the man who had discarded her? Nathan's phone rang. "Richard Blackwell, at this hour?" He answered with a terse, "What is it?" "Sorry to disturb you, Nathan, but there's something you should know," Richard said, his voice tense. "I just left a dinner with James Peterson, the hedge fund manager. What about him?" "He mentioned that Carter Investment Group is making a major play in the luxury retail sector. They're backing a new high-end boutique chain catering to mature women. Curated clothing, personalized styling, the works." Nathan felt a prickle of unease. "And the face of the brand, the creative director. It's Olivia, your ex-wife." The revelation hit Nathan with unexpected force. This wasn't just about modeling campaigns or a fortunate inheritance. Olivia was building something substantial, leveraging her newly reclaimed modeling career into a business venture with significant backing. "How far along is this project?" Nathan asked, keeping his voice neutral. "First flagship store opens in 3 months, Manhattan. Then Chicago, LA, Miami. Peterson says they're projecting 8-figure revenue in the first year." After ending the call, Nathan sat motionless, absorbing the implications. Olivia wasn't just surviving without him, she was thriving, creating something meaningful, potentially valuable. And Carter Investment Group clearly saw her potential, providing capital that would accelerate her success. A strange mixture of emotions washed over him: surprise, respect, and something else he was reluctant to name. Pride? No, that wasn't quite right. Regret, perhaps. Regret for underestimating her, for failing to see what she was capable of when freed from the constraints he'd placed upon her. Nathan poured another scotch, this one larger than the first. Tomorrow, he decided, he would call Marcus Sullivan again, not to investigate Olivia further, but to offer his congratulations on her new venture. It was the civilized thing to do, after all, and perhaps, if she was amenable, they might have dinner again. As he sipped his drink, Nathan found himself recalling a moment early in their marriage. Olivia excitedly showing him sketches for a clothing boutique she'd dreamed of opening someday. He'd dismissed the idea as impractical, a hobby rather than a serious business proposition. "Focus on being my wife," he'd told her. "That's more than enough responsibility." Now, nearly 2 decades later, she was bringing that dream to life without him. The irony wasn't lost on Nathan. He'd believed himself the architect of both their union and its dissolution, controlling the narrative at every turn. But Olivia had written her own unexpected final chapter, one in which she didn't need Nathan Reynolds at all. The following morning, Nathan woke earlier than usual, his sleep disturbed by dreams he couldn't quite remember. Victoria was still asleep, her beauty mask and earplugs ensuring her customary 8 hours of uninterrupted rest. He dressed quietly and left the penthouse before she stirred. At his office, he instructed Gretchen to clear his morning schedule, then called Marcus Sullivan. The modeling agent sounded wary when his assistant put Nathan through. "Nathan, twice in 1 week. To what do I owe this honor?" "I heard about Olivia's venture with Carter Investment Group," Nathan said, deciding directness was the best approach. "The boutique chain. It's impressive." A pause, then, "Yes, it is. Though I'm surprised you're calling to acknowledge that fact. I had dinner with Olivia last night," Nathan admitted. "It was enlightening." "I see." Marcus's tone remained cautious. "And now you're what? Offering congratulations? Or looking for investment opportunities?" The question gave Nathan pause. Was that what this call was really about? A business angle he could exploit? The thought had certainly crossed his mind. Getting in early on what could be a successful venture would be a sound financial move. "Neither, actually," he said finally. "I'm calling because I realized something. During our marriage, Olivia mentioned wanting to open a boutique. I dismissed it. Now she's doing exactly what she dreamed of, and doing it well. I just wanted to acknowledge that I was wrong." The admission felt strange on his lips, unfamiliar but not entirely unpleasant. Nathan Reynolds rarely admitted error, particularly in business matters. Marcus was silent for a moment. "That's unexpectedly self-aware of you, Nathan. What exactly are you hoping to achieve here?" It was a fair question, one Nathan wasn't entirely sure he could answer. "Nothing specific," he said finally. "Just closing a loop, I suppose." After ending the call, Nathan stood at his office window, looking out at the city sprawled before him. For decades, he'd measured success in straightforward metrics: profit margins, asset accumulation, market share. These concrete indicators had guided his decisions, professionally and personally. Yet now, confronted with Olivia's transformation, he found himself questioning whether he'd been using the right measurements all along. She had found purpose, passion, and apparently happiness. Achievements that defied quantification on a balance sheet, but seemed increasingly valuable from his current vantage point. Nathan's day proceeded mechanically. Meetings, conference calls, decisions made with his customary authority and precision. Yet his mind repeatedly drifted to Olivia, to the quiet confidence she'd displayed at dinner, so different from the eager-to-please woman he'd married. By late afternoon, his concentration was so compromised that he dismissed his executive team early, claiming a migraine. Back in his penthouse, he found a note from Victoria. "Gone to Miami for the weekend with the girls. Back Tuesday. Saktathini V." Attached was a receipt for her first-class flight and a 5-star hotel, expenses that would appear on his credit card statement, alongside her usual shopping indulgences. Once, Nathan had viewed Victoria's extravagance as the price of having a beautiful, sophisticated wife. Now, he found himself calculating the cost-benefit ratio with more critical eyes. He poured himself a scotch and settled into his leather armchair, absently flipping through financial reports until his phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. I've considered your dinner invitation. Tuesday, 7 p.m. My choice of restaurant this time. Olivia! A smile tugged at his lips, surprising in its genuineness. He saved her number and responded, Tuesday it is. Looking forward to it. The weekend stretched before him, emptier than usual without Victoria's comings and goings to distract him. Nathan typically filled his free time with golf, business reading, and the occasional social obligation. But today, restlessness drove him from the penthouse into the crisp autumn air. Without conscious decision, he found himself walking toward the Bergdorf Goodman department store where Olivia had worked as a personal shopper. Inside, the rarefied atmosphere of luxury retail enveloped him. Hushed conversations, subtle lighting, attentive staff who recognized wealth when they saw it. May I help you find something, sir? A sleek saleswoman approached, her practiced smile revealing nothing. Just browsing, Nathan replied, moving through the women's department with no clear purpose. He examined a display of cashmere sweaters, fingering the price tag of one in a deep emerald shade that reminded him of Olivia's eyes. Excellent choice, the saleswoman commented. That particular color is very popular this season. Nathan nodded absently, trying to imagine Olivia here, guiding uncertain customers through these expensive offerings, applying her natural eye for color and style. It seemed simultaneously beneath her and perfectly suited to her talents. Do you know an Olivia Morgan? He asked impulsively. She used to work here as a personal shopper. The saleswoman's expression brightened with genuine warmth. Olivia? Of course. Everyone here loves her. She's doing amazing things now. You've probably seen her in the Elegance Cosmetics campaign. She made quite an impression, Nathan observed. She changed the whole approach to our personal shopping service, the woman continued enthusiastically. Taught us to focus on how clothing makes a woman feel, not just how it makes her look. The customers still ask for her. Nathan absorbed this information, another piece of the puzzle that was the new Olivia. Even in a job he'd considered beneath her status as his former wife, she'd made a significant impact. Would you like me to wrap the sweater for you, sir? The saleswoman asked, mistaking his contemplation for decision. Yes, Nathan said, surprising himself. It's a gift. Back home, he placed the elegantly wrapped package on his desk, uncertain why he'd purchased it, or whether he would ever give it to Olivia. The color had simply seemed right, a perfect match for her eyes and complexion. Once, he'd regularly bought her expensive gifts, jewelry, designer clothes, accessories, all selected to enhance her appearance as the wife of Nathan Reynolds. This purchase felt different, chosen for her, not for how it would reflect on him. Sunday passed slowly, Nathan finding himself unusually disconnected from his usual routines. He declined an invitation to join business associates for golf, choosing instead to walk through Central Park, observing couples and families enjoying the autumn day. He found himself wondering what his life with Olivia might have been like had he approached their marriage differently. Had he valued her dreams alongside his own? Had he seen her as a partner rather than an accessory? Such thoughts were pointless, of course. The past couldn't be rewritten. Yet as Tuesday approached, Nathan found himself increasingly eager for their dinner, planning his schedule to ensure he would be free of distractions. Victoria returned from Miami tanned and refreshed, barely acknowledging his presence as she unpacked shopping bags filled with new acquisitions. The Chanel boutique at Bal Harbour is divine, she announced, displaying a handbag that likely cost more than most people's monthly salary. I simply had to have this. It's from their limited collection. Nathan nodded, making appropriate noises of approval while mentally calculating the probable cost. Once, Victoria's beauty and youth had seemed worth any price. Now, Watching her childlike excitement over another expensive trinket, he felt oddly detached. "I have a business dinner tonight," he informed her as she arranged her new purchases on their bed. "Don't wait up." Victoria waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Fine. I'm having drinks with the girls anyway." Melissa's finally leaving Harold. Can you believe it? After he paid for her third facelift, Nathan escaped to his home office. The contrast between Victoria's frivolous concerns and his recent conversations with Olivia striking him forcefully. When had he stopped valuing substance over surface? Had he ever valued it at all? At 6:30, Nathan left the penthouse dressed in one of his less ostentatious suits, the wrapped sweater tucked into a briefcase. Olivia had texted him the restaurant address, not one he recognized, located in a neighborhood he rarely frequented. His driver navigated to a quiet street in the West Village, stopping before a small, unassuming restaurant with a discreet sign, Luciana's. Through the windows, Nathan could see a warm, intimate space with perhaps 15 tables, most already occupied. Inside, the host greeted him with a genuine smile. "Mr. Reynolds? Ms. Morgan is already seated." Nathan followed him to a corner table where Olivia sat, wearing a simple navy dress that highlighted her slender figure. Her caramel hair was pulled back in a loose knot, revealing the elegant line of her neck. She looked up as he approached, her green eyes appraising him calmly. "You found it," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "Your directions were precise," Nathan replied, taking his seat. "I don't think I've been to this neighborhood in years." Olivia smiled. "That doesn't surprise me. It's not exactly Reynolds' territory." A waiter appeared with a bottle of wine already open and breathing. "The usual, Ms. Morgan?" "Yes, thank you, Antonio." She glanced at Nathan. "I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of ordering wine. This Barolo is exceptional." Nathan accepted a glass, struck by the role reversal. In their marriage, he had always selected the wine, often without consulting her preferences. "You come here often?" "Once a week, usually. Luciana was one of my first clients when I started personal shopping. She's the owner, a remarkable woman who started with nothing and built this place through sheer determination." Olivia took a sip of wine. "The food is authentic Northern Italian. Nothing pretentious, just honest cooking." As if summoned by her words, an older woman with silver-streaked black hair and laugh lines around her eyes approached their table. "Olivia, you brought a guest tonight." Her accent was melodious, her smile warm as she clasped Olivia's hand affectionately. "Luciana, this is Nathan," Olivia said simply, offering no further explanation of their connection. The woman's dark eyes studied him briefly. "Welcome to my restaurant. Any friend of Olivia's is special to us." She turned back to Olivia. "I have made the risotto with white truffles tonight, just as you like it." "Perfect," Olivia replied. "Thank you." After Luciana departed, Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Special treatment." "Friendship," Olivia corrected. "Something I've come to value greatly in recent years." They ordered, Olivia recommending dishes with the familiarity of a regular patron, and settled into conversation that flowed more easily than Nathan had anticipated. She asked about his business ventures with what seemed like genuine interest, and he found himself explaining complex deals in terms he rarely used with Victoria, who tended to glaze over at the mere mention of corporate strategy. "Carter Investment Group," he said eventually, watching her expression carefully. "That's a significant partnership for your boutique concept." Olivia's eyes widened slightly. "You've been busy with your investigation." "Just staying informed," Nathan replied smoothly. "It's an impressive business model. Upscale retail targeting mature women, a demographic with substantial disposable income, but traditionally underserved by the fashion industry." "That was exactly my pitch to them," Olivia acknowledged, seeming neither defensive nor boastful. "Women over 40 often feel invisible in luxury retail spaces. I experienced it firsthand after our divorce. Salespeople automatically directing me to the most conservative, matronly options, Assuming my age meant I wanted to disappear rather than express myself. She leaned forward, her passion for the subject evident. But these women often have more financial freedom than their younger counterparts, more confidence in their tastes, and a desire for quality over trends. Nathan nodded, genuinely impressed by her insight. The trust fund certainly helped get it off the ground, I imagine? Olivia's expression cooled noticeably. Ah, so you know about that too. It was in your grandmother's name, correct? Activated on your 45th birthday? She set down her wine glass with deliberate care. My maternal grandmother, a woman who built a small fortune from a single dress shop in Connecticut. She left equal amounts to all her grandchildren, with the stipulation that we wouldn't receive it until we were 45. Old enough, she believed, to use it wisely. Her gaze was steady. And yes, according to our prenuptial agreement, it remained separate property, not subject to division in divorce. A provision meant to protect my assets, Nathan noted with ironic appreciation. Life is full of unexpected symmetries, Olivia replied, though to be fair, I didn't know about the trust fund until after our divorce was finalized. My mother told me then. Apparently, my grandmother didn't trust you from the beginning, thought you'd find a way to control that money too. The assessment stung, not least because Nathan suspected he would indeed have found ways to influence how Olivia used her inheritance had he known about it during their marriage. Smart woman, your grandmother, he conceded. Olivia studied him, her expression softening slightly. Why are we here, Nathan? These dinners? The investigation into my finances? What is it you're really after? It was a fair question, one Nathan had been asking himself since their first encounter. What did he want from these meetings? To reassert control over a narrative that had slipped away from him? To understand how the woman he'd dismissed as helpless had transformed into this confident, successful person? Or something else entirely? I'm not entirely sure, he admitted finally. When Victoria mentioned seeing you, I was disturbed by the idea that you might be doing well without me. That wasn't the ending I had scripted. And now? Nathan considered the question carefully. Now I find myself curious, interested, perhaps even impressed. He met her gaze directly. The woman sitting across from me is so different from the one I was married to. Or perhaps she was always there, and I never bothered to look. Olivia absorbed his words thoughtfully. Both can be true. I am different, stronger, more confident, more authentic. But those qualities were always potential within me, seeds that needed the right conditions to grow. She took a sip of wine. Sometimes devastation creates fertile ground for reinvention. Their conversation paused as their meals arrived. Her risotto fragrant with truffles, his osso buco tender and rich. They ate in companionable silence for a few moments, the intimacy of shared food creating a bridge across the years and hurts between them. I brought you something, Nathan said when they'd finished their main courses. He reached into his briefcase and placed the wrapped package on the table between them. Olivia looked surprised. What's this? Just something that made me think of you. No special occasion. She unwrapped it carefully, folding the expensive paper rather than tearing it. When she revealed the emerald cashmere sweater, her eyes widened slightly. It's beautiful, she said, running her fingers over the soft material. And a perfect color. I remembered how well green suits you, Nathan said, feeling uncharacteristically uncertain. I was at Bergdorf's and— You went to Bergdorf's? Olivia interrupted, seeming more surprised by this fact than by the gift itself. Nathan nodded, feeling strangely exposed. I wanted to see where you had worked. The saleswoman spoke very highly of you. Olivia studied him with new interest. That's unexpected. I'm discovering I knew very little about your life, Nathan admitted. Even when we were married, her expression softened. Thank you for the sweater. It's thoughtful. The moment held a fragile connection, quickly broken when Olivia's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it briefly. Sorry, I need to respond to this. Work issue. Nathan watched as she typed a quick reply, struck by another reversal. How often had he interrupted their rare conversations during their marriage to handle urgent business matters? How many dinners had Olivia eaten alone while he took calls or responded to emails? "Everything okay?" he asked when she set the phone down. "Just finalizing details for a photo shoot tomorrow. The boutique launch is moving quickly." She smiled apologetically. "Speaking of which, I should probably call it a night soon. Early start tomorrow." Nathan signaled for the check, but Olivia shook her head. "It's taken care of," she said. "I arranged it when I made the reservation." Another inversion of their usual dynamic. Throughout their marriage and subsequent dinners with business associates, Nathan had always been the one to handle the bill, often with a flourish designed to emphasize his wealth and generosity. Outside the restaurant, the autumn night was cool and clear. The West Village streets quieter than the midtown avenues Nathan typically frequented. Olivia's driver waited at the curb, the same sleek Audi from their previous dinner. "Thank you for tonight," Nathan said, suddenly reluctant for the evening to end. "I'd like to do this again." Olivia considered him, her expression thoughtful. "Why, Nathan? What are we doing here? I'm not going to be your mistress, if that's what you're angling for." "That's not—" he began, then stopped, recognizing the fairness of her suspicion. His track record hardly suggested pure motives. "That's not what I want. I just enjoy your company, the conversation, the perspective." She studied him for a long moment. "We're not friends, Nathan. Too much history. Too much hurt. What are we then?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I do know that I've worked hard to rebuild my life, to create something meaningful. I won't risk that equilibrium for whatever this is." Nathan nodded, accepting her boundary. "I understand. But if you change your mind about dinner, I'll let you know," she said, her tone gentler than her words. She hesitated, then added, "Thank you again for the sweater. It really is lovely." He watched her car pull away, standing on the sidewalk long after it had disappeared from view. The night felt suddenly empty. The prospect of returning to his penthouse, with or without Victoria's presence, unexpectedly bleak. Instead, Nathan walked, allowing the unfamiliar neighborhood to envelop him. Past brownstones with warm light spilling from windows, small restaurants with laughing patrons, couples walking hand in hand, a different New York from the power corridors and exclusive venues he typically inhabited. His phone buzzed. Victoria, wondering when he'd be home. He texted a vague reply about meetings running late, a lie that came easily after years of marital disengagement. The truth, that he was wandering the West Village streets after dining with his ex-wife, would prompt questions he wasn't prepared to answer, even to himself. Eventually, Nathan found himself in a small, dimly lit bar. Not his usual haunt with its rare scotches and powerful clientele, but a neighborhood place with mismatched furniture and a jazz trio playing in the corner. He ordered a bourbon, neat, and settled into a worn leather chair, letting the music wash over him. 2 drinks later, his phone buzzed again. Not Victoria this time, but Olivia. "Thank you for dinner, and for making me think. Good night, Nathan." He stared at the message, reading complex meanings into its simple text. Was it merely politeness? An opening? A farewell? After typing and deleting several responses, he settled on, "The pleasure was mine. Sleep well, Olivia." Nathan stayed until the jazz trio packed up their instruments, nursing his bourbon, and reflecting on choices made and paths not taken. The melancholy that enveloped him was unfamiliar. He was not a man given to regret or second-guessing. Yet tonight, the certainties that had guided his life seemed suddenly less solid, like landmarks viewed through fog. When he finally returned to the penthouse, Victoria was asleep, her beauty mask in place, the bedroom air heavy with expensive night cream. Nathan stood in the doorway, observing his wife of 2 years with the strange detachment of an anthropologist studying an unfamiliar culture. How had this become his life? And more disturbingly, why had it taken seeing Olivia again to make him question it? The next morning, Nathan woke early, Victoria still sleeping as he dressed, and left for his office. The familiar routines of his business day, meetings, calls, decisions, provided welcome structure, yet he found his thoughts repeatedly drifting to Olivia, to the quiet intensity with which she had spoken of her new venture. Mid-morning, his concentration was broken by a call from Richard Blackwell. "Nathan, have you seen this?" Without waiting for a response, Richard forwarded an email containing a press release. Carter Investment Group announces Olivia Morgan Collection, revolutionary retail concept for discerning women. The accompanying photo showed Olivia standing before architectural renderings of a sleek boutique space, looking polished and professional in a tailored suit. The press release detailed plans for the flagship Manhattan store, followed by locations in major cities nationwide, featuring curated collections and personalized styling services for women over 40. "Impressive scope," Nathan commented, keeping his tone neutral despite the unexpected surge of pride he felt, seeing Olivia's vision taking tangible form. "The interesting part is the investor list," Richard replied. "Several major players we've worked with are backing this. Johnson from Meridian Capital, the Wexler brothers, even Harrison from First National. They're treating this as a serious venture, not some vanity project." The subtext was clear. Olivia had garnered support from sophisticated investors who recognized genuine business potential. This wasn't just about her trust fund or modeling contacts. She had created something that experienced financial minds believed would yield significant returns. "Keep me updated on developments," Nathan instructed, ending the call before Richard could ask why he was interested in his ex-wife's business ventures. Later that day, during a break between meetings, Nathan found himself opening his laptop and typing Olivia Morgan model into the search engine again. This time, the results were even more extensive. Articles about her unconventional entry into modeling at 45, interviews where she spoke eloquently about redefining beauty standards for mature women, and previews of her upcoming retail concept. One video interview particularly caught his attention. Olivia, seated in a stylish chair, responding to questions about her journey. "After my divorce, I had to rediscover who I was outside of being someone's wife," she said, her voice steady. "It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. I had to ask myself, what do I want? What am I good at? What brings me joy?" The interviewer, a sleek woman in her 50s, nodded encouragingly. "And what did you discover?" Olivia smiled, the expression transforming her face. "That I love helping women feel confident and beautiful. That I have an eye for what works on different body types. That my age and experience aren't liabilities, but assets." She leaned forward slightly. "And most importantly, that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be." Nathan closed the video, unexpectedly moved by Olivia's words. "It's never too late to become the person you were meant to be." The sentiment lingered, challenging him in ways he couldn't immediately articulate. His intercom buzzed, Gretchen reminding him of his 2 o'clock meeting with potential investors. Nathan straightened his tie and closed the browser window, compartmentalizing his thoughts about Olivia, as he'd done countless times with personal matters that threatened to intrude on business. The meeting proceeded efficiently, Nathan performing his well-rehearsed role as the confident visionary CEO. Yet beneath his polished exterior, questions stirred. What person had he been meant to be? Had he become that person, or merely accumulated the trappings of success without fulfilling deeper potentials? These unsettling thoughts followed him home, where he found Victoria supervising the delivery of yet another piece of expensive furniture. A modernist chaise lounge that clashed with the penthouse's existing aesthetic, but matched her latest obsession with Scandinavian design. "Isn't it divine?" she asked, not really expecting an answer as she directed the delivery men to position it precisely according to her specifications. "It's a limited edition, only 15 made worldwide." Nathan nodded absently, pouring himself a scotch, though it was barely 5 o'clock. "What did it cost?" he asked, the question slipping out before he could filter it. Victoria looked surprised. He rarely questioned her purchases. 22,000. But it's an investment piece. She studied him with sudden suspicion. Is there a problem? No problem, Nathan assured her, though the price struck him as absurd for what was essentially a fancy couch no one would sit on. Just curious. Later that evening, as they prepared for a charity gala benefiting some cause Nathan couldn't remember, he found himself observing Victoria with new eyes. She emerged from their bedroom in a designer gown that likely cost more than most people's monthly salary, dripping with diamonds he'd purchased for their first anniversary. "How do I look?" she asked, striking a practiced pose. "Beautiful," Nathan replied automatically. It was objectively true. Victoria was stunning, her beauty enhanced by expert styling and the confidence wealth provides. Yet, he found himself thinking of Olivia in her simple navy dress at Luciana's, her elegance unforced, her conversation substantive. The gala was predictable. Air kisses from people he barely knew, conversations about property values and vacation homes, charity auction items no one needed, but everyone bid on to demonstrate their philanthropic credentials. Nathan played his part with practiced ease, writing a sizable check, making appropriate small talk, smiling for photographs that would appear in society pages. Victoria worked the room with her usual skill, her laughter ringing out at strategic intervals, her hand on Nathan's arm a prop rather than a genuine connection. Once, he had valued her social adeptness, seeing it as an asset to his business reputation. Now it struck him as performative, a beautiful facade concealing an emotional vacancy. "The Morgans just closed on that penthouse in Tribeca," Victoria whispered as they sipped champagne near the bar. "30 million, and they're gutting it completely. Such a waste. The previous owners had just renovated." Nathan nodded, feigning interest while his mind drifted. 30 million for an apartment that would be torn apart and rebuilt according to the latest design trends, only to be sold again in a few years when styles changed or the owners grew bored. The circular futility of it all suddenly struck him with unexpected force. "Nathan, darling." A woman's voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see Melissa Jenkins approaching, her latest facelift indeed giving her the startled feline appearance Victoria had described. "You look absolutely marvelous. Both of you. Such a handsome couple." The usual pleasantries followed, until Melissa leaned in conspiratorially. "I just had the most interesting conversation with Marcus Sullivan. He tells me your ex-wife is quite the sensation in the modeling world now. Isn't that fascinating? At her age." Victoria's grip tightened on Nathan's arm, her smile freezing in place. "How unexpected," she managed, her tone deliberately casual. "Good for her. Apparently, she's launching some retail concept too," Melissa continued, oblivious to the sudden tension. "For older women, you know. Not that she's old, of course, but, well, not exactly young either." She laughed, the sound brittle against the ambient noise of the gala. "Olivia always had excellent taste," Nathan said evenly, feeling Victoria's fingernails dig into his forearm through his tuxedo sleeve. "I'm not surprised she's found success in that field." Melissa's eyebrows rose slightly at his positive response. "Well, how very modern and civilized of you, Nathan, supporting your ex-wife's endeavors." She glanced between them, clearly hoping for some drama to report to her social circle. "Victoria, dear, you're a lucky woman to have such an understanding husband." After Melissa drifted away, Victoria immediately released Nathan's arm and stepped back, her expression tight. "You knew about this? About Olivia's little business venture?" "It came up in conversation with Richard," Nathan replied carefully. "Apparently, some of our regular investors are backing her." "In conversation with Richard," Victoria repeated flatly. "And you didn't think to mention it to me?" Nathan shrugged. "I didn't think you'd be interested in Olivia's career." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "I'm interested in anything that has the potential to make me look foolish, Nathan. Being blindsided at social events about your ex-wife's sudden prominence definitely qualifies." The rest of the evening proceeded under a cloud of tension, Victoria maintaining her social smile while radiating icy displeasure toward Nathan. In the car returning home, she finally broke her silence. "Have you seen her?" The question was direct, her tone deceptively casual. Nathan considered lying but decided against it. "Yes, we had dinner. Twice, actually." Victoria stared out the window at the passing city lights, her profile rigid. "I see. And when were you planning to tell me about these little reunions?" "They weren't reunions," Nathan clarified. "Just civil conversations between two adults with a shared history." "How very sophisticated of you," Victoria said, sarcasm edging her words. "And what prompted these civil conversations? Concern for her welfare? Nostalgia? Or perhaps something else entirely?" Nathan turned to face her directly. "What are you implying, Victoria?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a straightforward question. Why are you suddenly having dinner with your ex-wife?" It was a fair question, one Nathan had been asking himself since that first impulsive visit to Olivia's photo shoot. "Curiosity, initially," he admitted. "When you mentioned seeing her getting out of a limousine, it seemed improbable, given the terms of our divorce." Victoria's laugh was sharp, without humor. "So you were checking to make sure she was still properly punished for being replaced? How petty, Nathan. Even for you." The assessment stung, not least because it contained a grain of truth. His initial reaction to hearing about Olivia's apparent success had indeed been disbelief tinged with resentment. How dare she thrive after he'd so carefully engineered her downfall? That may have been part of it, he acknowledged, but the conversations themselves were unexpectedly valuable. "Valuable," Victoria repeated, testing the word. "What an interesting choice of adjective. And what exactly did you find so valuable about these conversations with your ex-wife?" Nathan considered the question seriously. "Perspective, perhaps. Olivia has changed, grown, in ways I wouldn't have predicted. It's made me think about changes in my own life." Victoria turned to face him fully, her expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been fear. "Are you having an affair with her?" "No," Nathan replied immediately, the answer honest, if incomplete. Whatever was happening between him and Olivia, it wasn't a physical affair, but the emotional pull he felt toward her, the increasing discomfort with his current life that their conversations had catalyzed, was something he wasn't prepared to name, even to himself. "Do you want to?" Victoria pressed. Nathan sighed, suddenly weary of the performance their marriage had become. "That's not what this is about, Victoria." "Then what is it about, Nathan? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks very much like a man having some sort of midlife crisis, reconnecting with his ex-wife, while his current wife remains oblivious." The accusation hung between them as their car pulled up to their building. Nathan waited until they were in the privacy of their penthouse elevator before responding. "Perhaps it's about realizing that I've been measuring success by the wrong metrics," he said quietly. "That all of this," he gestured vaguely, encompassing their expensive surroundings, "may not be what I actually want anymore." Victoria's eyes widened, genuine surprise replacing her anger. "What are you saying?" The elevator doors opened before Nathan could respond, sparing him from articulating thoughts that were still forming in his own mind. They moved through their penthouse in silence, the space suddenly seeming overly large, impersonal despite the fortune spent on its decoration. In their bedroom, Victoria removed her diamonds with deliberate care, placing them in their velvet-lined case. "You're being ridiculous, you know," she said finally, her voice steadier. "This sudden philosophical crisis about wealth and success. It's textbook, really. The successful man questioning his life choices, looking backward with rose-tinted glasses." Nathan loosened his bow tie, watching her in the mirror's reflection. "Perhaps, or perhaps I'm finally asking questions I should have asked years ago." Victoria turned to face him, her expression calculating. "If this is about money, Nathan, we can discuss my spending. I know I've been extravagant lately. The trip to Miami, the new furniture. I can cut back." The offer surprised him. Victoria had never before acknowledged, much less offered to curtail, her lavish spending habits. "It's not about the money," he said slowly. It's about purpose, meaning, connection. She approached him then, placing her hands on his chest in a gesture that was half caress, half assertion of ownership. We have a connection, Nathan. A partnership. It's worked perfectly well until now. Had it, though? Nathan couldn't remember the last time he and Victoria had shared a genuine conversation. One that went deeper than social calendars or business obligations. Their physical relationship had become as routine and perfunctory as their emotional one, scheduled like a business appointment, performed with technical skill, but little genuine passion. "I need time to think," he said finally, stepping back from her touch. "This isn't about you, Victoria. It's about me figuring out what I want at this stage of my life." Her expression hardened. "Just be careful you don't destroy what you have while chasing ghosts, Nathan. Olivia may seem different now, but people don't fundamentally change, and neither do you." With that parting shot, Victoria disappeared into her dressing room, leaving Nathan alone with thoughts he couldn't quite organize into coherence. Was this just a predictable midlife crisis, as Victoria suggested? A temporary dissatisfaction that would pass once he regained his equilibrium? Or was it something more fundamental? A recognition that the path he'd chosen decades ago might not lead to the destination he truly desired? The following morning, Nathan left early for his office, grateful to escape the tense atmosphere of the penthouse. Victoria had been coolly polite at breakfast, her manner suggesting she considered their conversation closed. A momentary aberration rather than the beginning of a significant shift. At his desk, Nathan found himself unable to focus on the quarterly reports requiring his attention. Instead, he opened his laptop and impulsively typed midlife crisis symptoms into the search bar. The results were predictably stereotypical: restlessness, questioning life choices, desire for dramatic change, attraction to younger partners or abandoned dreams. Nathan frowned. His situation didn't quite fit the pattern. If anything, he was drawn not to youth, but to maturity, to Olivia's hard-won wisdom and authentic self-possession, qualities that contrasted sharply with Victoria's carefully maintained facade of perpetual youth. His phone buzzed with a text from Frank Walters. Final report on OM attached. Includes details on boutique venture and current personal situation. No significant other at present. Regular routine established. Full financials compiled. Nathan stared at the message, suddenly uncomfortable with the surveillance he'd initiated. What had seemed a reasonable business precaution now felt invasive, inappropriate. He replied, "Thank you. Please discontinue monitoring effective immediately." Frank's response came quickly. Confirmed. Final invoice forthcoming. Nathan set his phone aside, deciding against opening the attached report. Whatever insights it might contain about Olivia's life, he no longer wanted to obtain them through covert investigation. If there were things he needed to know, he would ask her directly, assuming she was willing to continue their tentative reconnection. As if summoned by his thoughts, an email notification appeared on his screen. From Olivia Morgan, the subject line reading simply, "Thank you." Nathan opened it immediately. "Nathan, I wanted to thank you again for the sweater. It's perfect for the cooler weather we're having. I'm wearing it today at a planning meeting for the boutique launch. I've been thinking about our conversations and the questions they've raised for me. If you're still interested in continuing our dialogue, I'm free for dinner next Tuesday. Same place? Olivia." Nathan read the message twice, noting its careful tone, friendly but measured, offering continuation without rushing toward it. He crafted his reply with equal care. "I'd like that very much. Tuesday at Luciana's, 7 p.m. And I'm glad the sweater is proving useful. Until then, Nathan." After sending the email, Nathan leaned back in his chair, a complex mixture of emotions washing over him. Anticipation, certainly, but also trepidation about where these continued meetings might lead. And beneath both, a growing certainty that his life was approaching a crossroads he hadn't anticipated. The week proceeded with deceptive normalcy. Meetings, decisions, the familiar rhythms of business success. Victoria maintained her polite distance, spending more time than usual with her social circle, returning late from lunches that stretched into early evening cocktails. Nathan recognized the pattern. When troubled, Victoria sought validation from the admiration of others, particularly men who found her beautiful and desirable. Once, this behavior would have provoked jealousy, or at least irritation. Now Nathan felt only a distant sadness, recognizing the insecurity beneath Victoria's carefully constructed confidence. Had he contributed to that insecurity? Probably. His attraction to her had always been primarily physical. His admiration focused on her beauty rather than her character or intellect. He had chosen her for what she represented: youth, beauty, status, rather than who she truly was. By Tuesday evening, Nathan found himself oddly nervous as he prepared for dinner with Olivia. He selected his clothes with unusual care, opting for a casual elegance that seemed appropriate for Luciana's unpretentious atmosphere. Victoria observed his preparations with narrowed eyes, but made no comment, absorbed in her own evening plans. Luciana greeted Nathan warmly when he arrived at the restaurant, as if he were now an established guest, rather than a stranger. "Olivia is not here yet," she informed him, "but your table is ready, the same one as before." Nathan settled in, declining a drink until Olivia arrived. The restaurant was busier than during their previous visit, the ambient noise of conversations and clinking glasses creating a pleasant background hum. He checked his watch. 10 minutes past 7. Unusual for Olivia, who had always been punctual. At 7:30, with no sign of Olivia and no message explaining her absence, Nathan began to worry. Had something happened? Or had she simply changed her mind about continuing their conversations? He was considering texting her when the restaurant door opened and Olivia rushed in, slightly breathless, her caramel hair wind-blown, her cheeks flushed. "I'm so sorry," she said as she approached the table. "Crisis at the studio. One of our key investors showed up unexpectedly, and I couldn't get away." "No apology necessary," Nathan assured her, standing to help with her coat. "Business emergencies are something I understand all too well." Settled across from him, Olivia ordered a glass of wine and took a moment to compose herself. "It's been a challenging day," she admitted. "The boutique launch timeline has accelerated. We're opening in 6 weeks instead of 3 months. "That's significant compression," Nathan observed. "What prompted the change?" "Our primary competitor announced a similar concept targeting the same demographic. We need to establish market presence first." She smiled ruefully. "The joys of business ownership. I'm sure you're familiar with the pressure." Nathan nodded, recognizing the familiar stress of competitive markets. "You seem to be handling it well." "Most days," Olivia agreed. "Today was more difficult than most. One of our suppliers is backtracking on commitments, claiming they can't meet our adjusted timeline. Anything I might be able to help with?" Nathan offered automatically, then paused, uncertain whether his assistance would be welcome or interpreted as overstepping. Olivia looked surprised by the offer. "That's kind of you, but I think we've got it under control. My team is negotiating alternatives." "You have a team," Nathan observed with a smile. "That takes some getting used to, doesn't it? The transition from doing everything yourself to delegating responsibility." "It does," Olivia acknowledged. "I'm still learning to trust other people's judgment on decisions that feel deeply personal. This boutique, it's not just a business to me. It's a vision, a statement about redefining beauty standards for mature women," Nathan said, recalling her interview. Olivia looked pleased that he'd remembered. "Exactly. It's about creating spaces where women over 40 feel seen and celebrated, not marginalized or pressured to look younger than they are." Their conversation paused as Luciana herself brought their meals, risotto for Olivia again, a pasta dish Luciana had recommended for Nathan. The food was exceptional, rich with authentic flavors that reminded Nathan of a trip to northern Italy years ago. "I saw the press release about the boutique," Nathan said as they ate. "The investor list is impressive. You've gathered serious backing. It wasn't easy, Olivia admitted. The first 5 investors I approached rejected the concept outright. Too niche, they said. Limited growth potential. One actually suggested I focus on anti-aging products instead, since no woman wants to embrace looking older. She rolled her eyes. Classic male perspective. What changed their minds? Data, Olivia said simply. I commissioned market research showing that women over 40 control 67% of discretionary spending on luxury goods, but feel underserved by traditional retail. The numbers were compelling enough to get Carter Investment Group's attention. Once they were on board, others followed. Nathan nodded appreciatively. Smart approach. Facts over emotion, even when the business itself is emotionally driven. I learned from the best, Olivia said with a wry smile. You always said business decisions should be based on data, not sentiment. The reference to their shared past created a moment of unexpected connection. Nathan found himself recalling dinner conversations from their marriage, where he'd lectured about business principles while Olivia listened attentively. Had he ever asked about her perspectives, her insights? He couldn't remember doing so. I've been thinking about our marriage, Nathan said, the words emerging before he could censor them, about how one-sided it was, how little space I created for your aspirations. Olivia set down her fork, clearly surprised by this turn in the conversation. That's unexpectedly reflective of you, Nathan. Seeing you now, confident, purposeful, creating something meaningful, has made me question many things, he admitted, including the man I was when we were married, the man I've been since. And what conclusions have you reached? Olivia asked, her tone careful, neither encouraging nor discouraging his introspection. Nathan chose his words deliberately. That I've prioritized acquisition over growth. That I've confused success with fulfillment. That I've created a life that looks impressive from the outside, but feels increasingly hollow from within. Olivia studied him, her green eyes searching his face for sincerity. That's quite an epiphany. It's been gradual, Nathan acknowledged, but seeing you again accelerated the process. The contrast between who you were then and who you are now is striking. Divorce was my catalyst, Olivia said quietly. What's yours? The question hung between them, direct and challenging. Nathan found himself unable to formulate a response that didn't sound self-serving or disingenuous. I'm not sure, he said finally. Perhaps a recognition that time isn't infinite, that choices have consequences beyond financial statements and business acquisitions. Olivia nodded slowly. Midlife reckonings come for most of us, I think. The fortunate ones pay attention. The remainder of their dinner passed in conversation that moved between business topics and more personal reflections. Nathan found himself more engaged, more present than he could remember being in years. When Luciana brought dessert, a tiramisu they agreed to share, the simple pleasure of the moment struck him with unexpected poignancy. Outside the restaurant, as they prepared to part ways, Nathan found himself reluctant to end the evening. Would you consider showing me the boutique space? He asked impulsively. I'd be interested to see your vision taking physical form. Olivia hesitated, clearly weighing the request. It's still very much under construction, she cautioned. More concept than reality at this point. All the more interesting, Nathan countered, seeing the transformation process. After a moment's consideration, Olivia nodded. All right, it's not far from here, actually. We can walk, if you don't mind. They strolled through the West Village streets, the autumn evening crisp but pleasant. Nathan found himself noticing details he typically overlooked. The varied architecture of the brownstones, the warm light spilling from restaurant windows, the easy camaraderie of people engaged in ordinary evening activities. It's here, Olivia said eventually, stopping before a storefront with papered windows and construction permits visible in the glass. She retrieved a key from her purse and unlocked the door, ushering Nathan into a space in the midst of transformation. The interior was illuminated by temporary construction lights, revealing high ceilings, original brick walls, and concrete floors yet to be finished. Plastic sheets protected areas where work was in progress, and architectural plans were pinned to a makeshift bulletin board. "It doesn't look like much yet," Olivia acknowledged, leading him further inside. "But in 6 weeks, this will be the flagship Olivia Morgan Collection boutique." She gestured toward different areas. Curated clothing collections there, accessories along that wall, a styling consultation space in the back, where clients can work one-on-one with personal shoppers. Nathan moved through the space, genuinely interested in the layout and concept. "The exposed brick adds character," he observed. "Are you keeping the industrial elements?" "Yes, but softened with warm lighting, comfortable seating, artwork by female artists." Olivia pointed to the architectural renderings on the wall. "The idea is to create an environment that feels both sophisticated and welcoming, not intimidating like most luxury boutiques." As she described her vision, Nathan was struck by her passion and clarity of purpose. This wasn't merely a business venture for her, but a deeply personal mission, creating spaces where women like herself could feel valued and understood. "It's impressive," he said sincerely. "Not just the concept, but your commitment to it, the transformation from idea to reality." "Thank you," Olivia replied, seeming genuinely pleased by his assessment. "It's been challenging, but deeply satisfying." They stood together in the half-finished space, surrounded by potential, yet to be realized. In the stark construction lighting, Olivia's face showed subtle signs of age, fine lines at the corners of her eyes, a slight softening of her jawline, changes that spoke of experience and character rather than diminishment. She was beautiful in a way that transcended conventional standards, authentic in a manner Victoria's carefully maintained perfection could never achieve. "I should go," Nathan said finally, aware of an increasing pull toward her that he wasn't yet ready to examine fully. "Thank you for showing me this." Outside, they parted with a brief, slightly awkward embrace. More than a handshake, but less than the kiss on the cheek they'd exchanged at their previous meeting. Nathan watched Olivia's car pull away before signaling his own driver, his mind filled with images of the boutique space and the woman who had conceived it. Back at the penthouse, Nathan found Victoria entertaining guests. 2 couples from their social circle, the men in casual designer wear, the women showcasing the latest cosmetic procedures alongside their expensive jewelry. Their laughter seemed brittle and forced as Nathan entered, glasses of champagne in hand. "Nathan!" Victoria exclaimed with exaggerated warmth. "We didn't expect you so early. Join us. We're celebrating Jennifer's new summer home in the Hamptons." The contrast between this scene and his evening with Olivia struck Nathan with almost physical force. Here was his current life, surface-level connections, conspicuous consumption, conversations devoid of substance. He made polite excuses and retreated to his study, pouring himself a scotch as the forced laughter continued in the living room. Seated at his desk, Nathan opened his laptop and navigated to the Reynolds Enterprises website. The company mission statement greeted him, "Creating exceptional value through strategic acquisition and market dominance." Words he'd approved years ago, focused entirely on financial metrics and competitive positioning. He thought of Olivia's boutique, its purpose extending beyond profit margins to touch on deeper human needs. Recognition, celebration of authentic beauty, spaces where women could feel truly seen. When had he last created anything with such meaningful intent? Nathan closed the laptop, a decision crystallizing in his mind with unexpected clarity. Something needed to change, not just in his personal life, but in his approach to business, to purpose, to legacy. The path forward wasn't yet clear, but the necessity of finding a new direction was becoming undeniable. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her social smile replaced by a more calculating expression. "Your business dinner ended early," she observed, leaning against the doorframe. "Investor not as promising as you'd hoped?" "It wasn't an investor meeting," Nathan replied, deciding that honesty, however uncomfortable, was necessary. I had dinner with Olivia again. Victoria's posture stiffened, though her expression remained controlled. I see. And did you find this dinner as valuable as your previous encounters? Yes, Nathan said simply. I did. You realize how this looks, don't you? Victoria's voice was tight. My husband repeatedly dining with his ex-wife, keeping it secret from me? I'm telling you now, Nathan pointed out. And there's nothing inappropriate happening, Victoria. We're just talking. Just talking, she repeated skeptically. About what, exactly? Old times? Shared memories? Or perhaps her miraculous transformation from discarded wife to successful businesswoman? The characterization stung, not least because it contained elements of truth. About many things, Nathan said carefully. Business, personal growth, perspectives on life. Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. How very philosophical. And these deep conversations couldn't possibly happen with your current wife? The question hung between them, its answer obvious to both. When had he and Victoria last discussed anything more meaningful than social engagements or renovation plans? Their marriage had been built on mutual benefit rather than genuine connection. Her youth and beauty enhancing his status, his wealth and position securing her lifestyle. That's what I thought, Victoria said, interpreting his silence correctly. Well, enjoy your midlife crisis, Nathan. Just remember that prenuptial agreements work both ways. I won't be leaving this marriage with nothing. As she turned to rejoin their guests, Nathan realized with sudden clarity that the prospect of his marriage ending didn't fill him with dread or even regret. Instead, he felt an unexpected lightness, as if a burden he'd carried unconsciously for years might finally be set down. The next morning, Nathan made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of going to his office, he directed his driver to the construction site of Olivia's boutique. He arrived early, before most of the workers, finding Olivia already there, reviewing plans with a contractor. She looked up in surprise as he entered. "Nathan? What are you doing here?" He approached with purpose, an idea that had formed during a largely sleepless night now fully crystallized. "I'd like to make you a business proposal. If you enjoyed the story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, which city are you watching from? If you'd like to support me on Buy Me a Coffee, just check out the pinned comment below. Thanks for the coffee, and see you in the next story.